Redditisation is a blight on the Western world. Redditisation is the culmination and bringing together of numerous intellectual and moral trends that stretch back over 300 years and brings them together in one singular identity. One singular identity that personifies so much of what is wrong with contemporary society. This extends from the proud dislike and disdain for their own native religion. This goes into an intellectual pride which cannot be educated except by fancy-looking scientists on the Discovery Channel. This extends also into an unhealthy obsession with fan culture, a fixation with Marvel or a fixation with Star Trek or Star Wars in the place of which should be God. This also manifests in a profound ignorance of the history of their peoples, be it European or otherwise. It also manifests in an intense hostility against any sort of ideology that would oppose theirs. Their ideology can be defined as follows. People are ultimately completely subjective. There's no objective bounds to anything. The only rule of sex is consent. And that the world is a fundamentally physicalist, materialist place. Although in some cases, particularly I imagine with women, this takes on a vague spiritual air, which doesn't have any kind of definition, nor any kind of intellectual tradition behind it. In other words, it's sheer woo. And so I thought that I would make a series responding to some of the more irritating aspects of this persona that we often see on the internet. Not only because it is something that I'd like to squish, but also because if, perchance, maybe a Redditor actually listens to me when I am saying certain things, which I think he's probably already logged off by now, then he can consider this and maybe even respond, and maybe even change his mind. Because I was somebody who was once very much in this mindset, and I have grown out of it, quite frankly. It's a growing out of it. It's not simply a matter of opinion here. It's a growing out. And so we will be discussing, in this series, which I hope to do over the course of a few days, some of the aspects of the Redditisation of the mind, or Reddit ideology, we will simply call it. The first one is the Antichristianity. The second one will be discussing the limits of science, or rather the presuppositions of science. The third one will be talking about the fact that philosophy has to be reliable for any of this to work. The fourth will be on sexual ethics, particularly in relation to places like r/polyamory. We will also, in the fifth one, be discussing telos and the subjectivity of humankind. And then in the final ones, we will be discussing largely religious topics. So the first one will be the Reddit attitude of I'm too smart to actually learn anything. Because a lot of these people will have had experiences with low church American Protestantism. Because this is a very popular strand of religion in America at this moment. Now, in Europe, this does exist, but it's far smaller. And these people, in their ignorance, quite frankly, they tend to boil down Christianity down to this. And this is not going to do because it's just not true. You're going to have to do a lot better than dunking on Pastor Tom from the local Reformed Baptist Church if you want to actually deal with the Christian tradition. Also, we're going to be discussing the stupidity of atheism. The stupidity of this idea that we are just floating objects and, look at me, I'm Pickle Rick. And finally, we will be dealing with how people will often say, I don't need religion to be a good person, which, first of all, doesn't understand the purpose of religion, and second of all, assumes, although these people can never actually formally derive what a good person is, that they are in fact a good person, which is almost certainly false. And so we will begin with the Antichristianity, which is going to likely turn off a lot of these people. But we shall get into it in the next video. Please tune in for more. It should be out today. And please subscribe to my Patreon, particularly if you're interested in learning the Latin language. I produce Latin readers for Latin learners so that they can develop a more fluent ability to read in that language. Thank you very much for watching.